Welcome back to PPCM's Painful Truth. Today's guest, Tara Compton.
Hi, Tara.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much today for giving me your time and telling me about your peripartum cardiomyopathy PPCM experience. What state are you in? Why don't you introduce yourself and the age that you were diagnosed?
Yeah, Tara Compton. I'm 42 years old now. I was 40 when I was diagnosed. It was 3 months after I gave birth that I was diagnosed with my cardiomyopathy. And so my daughter is 19 months old now, and I am currently listed for a transplant and living with an LVAD.
So, when you were pregnant, the first time you were pregnant, so you had 2 PPCMs babies?
No, my first pregnancy, if I had it went undetected. This was my second pregnancy when I developed the PPCM.
Did you have a feeling of difference between the 2 pregnancies to know that this one just doesn't feel right?
No, both pregnancies were a breeze for me. Like I thought being pregnant was a piece of cake. I had, minor complaints, a little carpal tunnel, a little, usual discomfort. But my second pregnancy also had gestational diabetes involved, but we managed that really well without medication, just diet, kept it under control. Birth went easy peasy. I had 2 unmedicated births, and I was home for 3 months before things really got troublesome.
So your peripartum cardiomyopathy peaked after you gave birth.
Yes.
And since you were never diagnosed and you were left untreated, how long after you gave birth, and what was your extreme symptoms that exacerbated that led you to having to get a new heart?
Right. So I think my first symptoms I noticed a couple of weeks after I gave birth. And it was, I would just like a little nocturnal cough, like in the middle of the night coughing. And I thought, that's nothing. Then slowly over the summer, it got worse and it got worse. And I thought, well, my allergies must be getting worse. Of course, this is summer of 2020. I don't really want to go to urgent care or even my primary care to seek basic care, because why expose myself in an environment when I don't have to and I have an infant at home?
And this was also during
COVID.
COVID.
Of put off addressing it. What's that?
Yeah. And this was also probably during COVID.
Yeah. Exactly.
So you didn't want to go to the hospital or...
Right. During COVID, pre-vaccines, so it was the Wild West. So anyway, by the end of the summer, so it'd been like 3 months, I was really struggling to just walk any kind of distance. Even just walking to the car from my house, I would get really winded and it would take me several minutes to recover. Mm-hmm. And we finally, my husband was like, forget it. We're going to we're taking you to urgent care at a minimum. Mm-hmm. I thought for sure this is, maybe I'm just developing asthma or my allergies have gotten really bad. And I was in urgent care by myself because they didn't allow partners to come. And they took a chest x-ray and told me your heart is extremely enlarged and you need to see a cardiologist as soon as possible. So we went to the ER that night, confirmed the suspected diagnosis of peripartum cardiomyopathy, got me on a bunch of diuretics and just trying to get the fluid off my lungs. So I was in hospital for a week. They actually allowed my infant to stay with me because she was still breastfeeding. So my husband and daughter were in the hospital with me for that first stay. They sent me home with the wearable defibrillator, the life vest, and medication regimen that was friendly to breastfeeding. it didn't work. I was getting worse. And after about a month, I went back to the hospital. So they said, okay, next step, you're gonna have to wean your baby. We're gonna put you on different medications, and we're gonna give you a pacemaker, but a biventricular pacemaker, so that it would pace my heart, and also be there for defibrillation if I needed it. And it was just, so at this point, I'm about 4 months post-birth. My daughter was 4 months old. I was going in for a pacemaker install in the cath lab. And as they were placing the leads into my heart, it's just like a 1 in 1,000 thing that happens, but it happened. They perforated my heart. And I immediately went into cardiac arrest. They did 15, 20 minutes of CPR with no luck at all. And this is kind of the Hail Mary that they did to save me. And thank God I was at a hospital where they actually do this, because they said there's only 6 hospitals on the West Coast that even train on this procedure. But in the cath lab, so not in an OR, not in a sterile environment, they opened my chest and put me on direct to ECMO, which I didn't know what it was before this, until I woke up 8 days later and heard all about it. So I was on open chest ECMO for 2 days while they figured out what the next step was for me, if they were going to be able to get me listed for transplant, which, probably wouldn't have gone well. Or they gave me the LVAD, and they landed on giving me an LVAD. So after 2 days on ECMO, they install the LVAD, surgery goes well. I did develop a HIT, the heparin-induced thrombo something. Basically, I'm allergic to heparin, the blood thinner. So my platelets got down into single digits, and it was just really scary, dangerous territory. And anyway, lots of complications, but ultimately I woke up 8 days later, not knowing what had happened. My husband told me, "You've been asleep for over a week." And I was like, "Come on, shut up. I don't believe you. You thought he was messing with me." And that's when I learned what an LVAD was and what ECMO is, and that my prognosis was,
your diagnosis was
my life expectancy was dramatically shortened.
So your diagnosis was when your life was at a threat from the ER. And what hospital was this that diagnosed you?
Swedish Cherry Hill in Seattle.
And the fact that you had, easy breezy pregnancies, and this obviously occurred after, it indicates and really shows in full color canvas why this BNP test, echo, chest x-ray, lab screening and testings must be raised as the new standard and mandatory testing for all pregnancies. Even if you are having an easy breezy lemon squeezy baby, it peaks after birth. Mine peaked after birth, but we have zero diagnosis in OB. We are having a baby, and we need to go into and depend on cardiology, because women don't know to ask for this simple blood test, and it's not mandatory. So I am so sorry that you have, talk about the rug literally pulled out from underneath you, and then smacked you a few times on top of that, because you seem like you didn't have any prior health problems or conditions before your pregnancy-induced complication. Is that correct?
Nothing related. I have rheumatoid arthritis,
but nothing
which was diagnosed during my first pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
Nothing like blood fluid or heart issues or circulation problems. This was all induced complication.
Yeah.
And what's your EF percent today?
Good question. I have another echo coming up in February. My last one was in September. I think I was at, they estimated about 35%. At diagnosis, I was 15%. At my weakest, I was 5 or 10%. And it's been building up slowly. But another thing that came to light.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, very few people with an LVAD are able to explant, to be done with that and go back to using your native heart. But I was determined, like, that's going to be me. I'm going to be the one. And a couple things happened spring of 2021. Number one, we had my first 6-month echo, and I'd seen really good improvement, but not as fast as they'd like to see to be hopeful for an explant. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that happened is my uncle had passed away. And of course, as families do, they don't reveal information until it's too late, not useful anymore. But right. We found out that my uncle had a heart condition that has a specific genetic link. He had ARVC, the genetic mutation is the PKP2 mutation, which basically is a vulnerability in the connective tissue that holds the heart cells, bonds them to each other. Mm-hmm. So while I didn't develop that same condition, I don't have ARVC. I didn't have ARVC. But it's also kind of that mutation they're learning is connected to just kind of a broader umbrella of cardiac stuff.
As well as in the African American women, it's mutated. They have we have the blood codes and the testings for that, because exactly what you're talking about is why they have a higher death rate because of the mutation. And but yes, you're going somewhere with this. I'm glad that you're bringing this up, actually. So please continue.
Yeah. So anyway, as soon as I mentioned to my cardiologist, I say, my uncle just passed away, and then we found out that he had this thing. He's diagnosed 10 years earlier or something. Mm-hmm. And they were like, wait a minute, we need to test you for this thing. I was like, okay, sure. Do the test, comes back, I'm positive for this mutation. So between that and my not super rapid recovery of EF, they thought, we need to get you listed for transplant, because even if you're able to recover, which is unlikely, the chance of relapse is way too high for us to be comfortable with, going forward with an explant. So they're like, your long-term prognosis is much better with the transplant route. So we started the evaluation for transplant process. But interestingly, when we met with the genetic counselor after I tested positive for this genetic mutation, she said something that still sticks with me. She's like, if we had known about this family history, either of the genetic mutation itself or just the ARVC being in your family, the recommendation from genetic counseling would be all this extra screening, including probably the BNP and the baseline echo, and all of that would have been recommended if you had this information and you shared this information with the right medical professional at the right time.
Wow. My family has cardiomyopathy. My cousin died at 42 or 41 from cardiomyopathy. My grandfather on my father's side, cardiomyopathy. My mom's mom, my grandma Rosie. So I have, it's positive, as it's, even though I had, this is not a heart issue disease. The heart is affected by the fluid, and our native heart is damaged because we were left untreated. So the heart is affected, but this is a fluid blood disease that basically crushes your heart to death. And so the heart is caused, the effect is the fluid, and the no diagnosis to no treated until life threat, and you need a new heart or you're being revived from cardiac death, like myself. It's been a very confusing disease, waking up from something like this and having very little information other than to say, oh, if I knew, if, it's too many ifs when, you know, women have been giving birth since the beginning of time. We are having this conversation for the first time when this should be an ancient conversation, because we have survivors that have lived a very, very long life, past even 27 years. Once you recover, you're recovered. Yes, our life is shortened, but there is recovery because it's a pregnancy induced. This is not our norm. Our norm is healthy.
Yeah.
And so, you know, when was your heart replaced from a new heart to from your taking out your native heart to adding a new heart? When was that implanted?
I'm listed for transplant now, so I'm waiting.
You're listed. Okay. Well, then we're going to have to do a follow-up interview on this.
Sure.
You know,
well, and here's another thing, because of all of the ECMO and the heparin allergy, I received a ton of blood product in the hospital. Like 26 units of blood total and like 6 units of platelets. So they were not surprised when I started the transplant evaluation process that my antibodies were like through the roof. So, you know, someone who's never had children, never had a blood transfusion, 0% antibodies. They expect something with some pregnancies, maybe you're in the single digits. With transfusions, it could be anywhere. And I came in at 93%, which is like, wow, this is an oversimplification, but what the doctor told me was that means only 7% of hearts that come available, your body would not reject. So you're going to be waiting a very long time for your heart. Like, and they were going to maybe refer me down to Cedars-Sinai in LA because they take the most complicated.
That's the hospital. That's the hospital that literally left me to die. Zero awareness, high risk, led me on for over a year. A woman just died after childbirth there, November 21st, 2021. And that is the reason why I started this platform. I mean, I started this platform 5 years ago, but I started the docuseries and the podcast right after that she died. They were not willing to listen to my story. I had cardiac death. I was pronounced dead over 30 minutes. I was in a hyperthermia coma. I'm a very, very healthy girl to my times of death called. And they made me feel like it was my fault and the ifs and this and that. And they disrespected the disease and me as a woman. And it clearly shows that it falls on deaf ears with having the experience of a woman surviving this and then following 2 deaths. Still at that hospital. And the ER wrote on my discharge I was not ill and that I was fine and have a great Thanksgiving. Well, guess what? 7 days later, I had cardiac death in Arizona that saved my life, and they had PPCM awareness. So Cedars-Sinai in Beverly Hills is not the place to go. Now, Dr. Carol Watson at UCLA, the head of Women's Heart and Center, and she's the director of the Barbara Streisand's Women Heart Association program. She had my heart in her hands February 14th, 2018, which is why my docuseries is coming out on the 14th. It's my second heart anniversary. And she has awareness and she's fabulous. And she's, you know, at UCLA, and she's, you know, understands the disease, and she's educating gynecology at UCLA because I have been demanding, and she agrees, This needs to be talked about. Actually, today at 5 p.m., we have a doctor, award-winning doctors are coming through, and we're tonight at 5 p.m. With the Barbara Streisand's Heart Association program with PPCM Fund, and other doctors are having a heart-to-heart health conversation, which is leaps and bounds of what the neglect of what women have been going through, because the communication here is the issue. There has been none until now. And, you as a new mom, you just gave birth 19 months ago. You now have a possibility of getting a new heart. If you need assistance in finding a heart, you need to self-advocate. As we know, that's self-advocacy is the key here for women in America. So Birmingham, Alabama has the largest heart harvest. So if you need to find a heart, you call Birmingham, Alabama, and you say to the university there, they have a great heart lab, and they have like hearts and volts, like literally they have the largest heart harvest. You have to go, like, if you want to go online and, or if you want to shop for snow gear, you don't shop in Florida. You shop like in Utah or Colorado. You know what I'm saying? If and vice versa, it's the same thing. It's like finding a doctor is like trying to find the good, a good fit, for what you're looking for. And, if they don't have it and they're saying, oh, you have a low chance because of your antibodies that you might have 7% of finding a compatibility, then say, okay, well then I need to find the largest heart harvest and find one. I
had a more fortunate turn of events, thankfully.
Okay, good.
So, I mean, it was between, do I stay here in Seattle and list at the University of Washington, or do they refer me down to Cedars because their transplant, it sounds like they have problems with their OB, but they take all the complicated immune cases down there.
No, you go to UCLA. I'll give you my doctor's cell number.
There's more.
I said, you go to UCLA. I'll even give you my doctor's cell number.
So anyway, 6 weeks later, they tested my antibodies again. It was down to 0 from 93%. Everybody's doing a double take, like, this doesn't happen. What's going on here? This is like a difference in 2 different labs because 2 different hospitals sent out for it. They test again, it's 0 again. Okay, I'll take it. So I no longer am facing this like high antibody, extra long wait. So the thing that's most important to me is being able to be close to my family while I'm recovering. And that means getting my transplant here in Seattle. And so I'm listed with the University of Washington, thank goodness, that my antibodies came back into range, and they were going to put me through desensitization therapy. And we had a whole plan for that when this test came back, and everybody like kind of did a reset on it. But I've been listed for 4 months now with an O blood type. It'll maybe be a 9 to 18 month wait, but nobody really knows. So here I am.
So here you are. Here we are, 2022, talking about something that should have been already prevented with the awareness decades ago. Yeah. And my heart goes out to you because you have a little boo-boo. How is she doing? You have a little girl?
I have 2 girls. They're both incredible. One
and
of them is 5.5 and the other one is 19 months. She's downstairs sleeping right now. I apologize if she wakes up. I have to go get her.
How is she
thriving,
doing?
0 health issues.
Great.
They're perfect. Yeah.
Yes.
She's huge, gigantic baby, like 99 point every
Solid.
percentile.
Good, solid.
Like 19 months, about 35 pounds.
Wonderful.
I'm not messing around with that kid.
No. Well, I mean, blessings to you and your family and good health, moving forward. But I definitely want to do a continued interview with you. You are, as so am I and my PPCM baby. We are studies. We are living proof that this is real. This is a real disease. You could be healthy. It's a young, healthy woman disease. It's induced. And, you have the awareness. I have the awareness. It's not about us. It's about our children's children and our children. And, we are literally walking through fire, holding buckets of water for women and for our children to make sure that this does not happen to another woman and family ever again. Because if there's early diagnosis, then there is treatment, then there is prevention. But if there's no testing, like you said, you had an easy pregnancy and now you need a new heart because the test is not standard and mandatory. That couldn't be diagnosed until you are at a threat currently. And that breaks my heart. It literally breaks my heart. And this is a very important interview.
I did a lot of gaslighting myself, to be honest, when I was symptomatic. You're at 2 a.m. coughing and I get up my phone and I'm like, nocturnal cough symptoms. Like, okay, Dr. Internet, what could this be? And could be allergies, could be asthma, could be heart failure. And it's, I've gone to the catastrophic place before. Like, it's always the worst case scenario. Right. And I had to, that is like PTSD from my rheumatoid arthritis diagnosis, to be honest. But I'm like, no, I'm not going to catastrophize this. It's not, that's a 1 in 4,000 outcome. It's not likely. It's not the most likely outcome. I'm not going to spend my emotional energy giving myself this terrible diagnosis. I have a baby to take care of. And these other options that it could be are so minor that it's not urgent that I need to go get healthcare tomorrow. So over and over, I just kept Googling it and kept Googling different variations of it. And it's like, oh, it can't be heart failure. Oh, it can't be that. Can't be that.
Because we never think it can happen to us.
Maybe if I had trusted my worst fears a little more, I would have taken care of myself. I have a record of it. I think I was 1 month out and I had emailed my OB and said, I've been having these symptoms and they were pretty mild at that time. And I'm like, I just want to rule out the worst case. I just want to rule out a pulmonary embolism. That's my biggest fear. Like, heart failure is not even on the, like, pulmonary embolism is as far as my brain will even go. And I got the response from her medical assistant who was like, yeah, it sounds like you should just go to urgent care for that, get checked. And I was like, okay, I will. And I didn't. If I had gone to urgent care, maybe they could have detected something and then examined it further. So it's like partly on them for not asking more questions, partly on me for not taking their advice. But
at this point, it's
and I use the excuse of we're in a pandemic and I don't want to go out and expose myself when I don't have a vaccine for me or my baby. And then here we go. It actually is the worst case scenario. And it got bad. Like, the night I crashed, they told my husband, she's the sickest person in this hospital tonight. And this Swedish Cherry Hill only does neuro and cardio. Like, it's not a regular hospital. It's a cardiology hospital and a neurological hospital. I was the sickest patient in the hospital that night. They said she has a 50% chance of surviving the night and a 30% chance of surviving to discharge. So he went home and was planning where to scatter my ashes. That's where that went. So there's all kinds of like trauma that's happened to the family as a result of the situation. And the best gift in it all is like I have a renewed like, it's so surprising, but I feel more optimistic at this point in my life than I ever have. It's sort of like, well, if that didn't take me down, what else am I like? What I spent so much energy worrying about things that would never happen before. And what good did that do me?
Didn't serve you, right?
And so it's like, how can I redirect this energy? And what's landed square in my lap is like, I'm still alive. I'm still above ground. I still have runway. We can still figure this out. I'm going to be fine. And there's the baby crying.
Mm-hmm. Well, on that note, you know, mental health and staying positive and knowing to be your best friend and care for yourself and advocate for your mental health, and know that, you know, this disease does not, you can't be diagnosed with this disease and what we have gone through without a depression. You wouldn't be, you wouldn't be normal. We are not mechanical. We are human. And, you know, I believe in mental health. I knew at one point I could not do this without medication. And now I'm so much better. I was crying every single moment of the day or sleeping, and I couldn't be the mommy that I wanted to be. I was terrified. You know, things were out of my control, and I'm somewhat of a control organized person. So when I couldn't control my health, it caused a lot of complications with me trying to function, and I couldn't. I had to relearn a lot. And it is, you are, as women, when we give birth, we're a different person anyway, because we're no longer the girl, the lady, the young woman that we were. Now we're a mom. And then when you add pericardiomyopathy, PPCM on top of that, just giving life when being the sickest woman in the hospital, when you were healthy and you felt like you were fine your entire pregnant until now, I mean, you have to be a very, very, very strong person, like your soul, your spirit, your way down underneath your core, your self being has to be very, very strong to learn the coping skills and to know this makes me feel worse, so I'm not going to go there. This makes me feel better, and I'm going to be kind to myself because I have been through it. And you have, and you know, and on top of that, you have a beautiful little baby. So it's like, don't feel that mental health is not as just as an awareness as your heart, because I do believe, like you just used a very good mind over sickness empowerment. You want to be positive, and you don't want to create something that may not be there and worry yourself. But at the same time, you know, there is the reality. So you're balancing that, you're finding coping skills, which is wonderful. I mean, and if you need a trazodone at night and you need Zoloft, or you need something else, or you need, you know, a different combination, there's nothing wrong with that. With trauma, there is fluid in the brain, just like we had fluid in our body that crushed our hearts. There is fluid in the brain, and you just want to just make sure that, you know, it's balanced. And we can only condition for so much. And if there is real trauma there, I had a neurological an evaluation afterwards, because, you know, you just don't know the balance of the trauma and the major PST that comes with this, and at night, and how we sleep. And sleep is so important because it recovers you, and sleep heals. And that just shows you that the mind can also heal the body. I do believe that the mind can heal the heart as well, or can give it anxiety. If your mind is racing and racing and racing, it can make you sick, right?
Yep.
But if we're kind to ourselves mentally, and we take our moment, we take our beat, we do what we do, we, distract, change. If you change the thought, you change the feeling, but easier said than done. So, we just take it one day at a time, and you're not alone in this. This comes with, it comes with the disease. And I do, when, you see the balance scale between the brain and the heart, you really don't understand that visual until you have heart failure. Really. And so I commend you for, giving me your time today, and, spending it with me, because, time is precious, and you have a baby that's precious, and you're here to educate others and to, also learn. And I think that when you watch the series, and, every woman is different, but each woman puts in this PPCM puzzle with each experience, because, we have documentation at hospitals, but really, what is our documentation? What is our docuseries? This is the painful truth of what a woman goes through, where you say you have really no reason for this to happen prior, other than it could have been genetic. And that if you knew that, then maybe you would have been early diagnosed. No. Early diagnosis should be mandatory. So there's no excuse. And, you and I, along with other PPCM survivors, we fight to be heard when we're uncomfortable. Some struggle and suffer like I did, and just pushed aside and just said whatever assumption that they could think of. And we don't need assumptions. We need real diagnosis. And there is a simple blood test that will determine that. If you have your follow-up in like a few months, I would say maybe, because our babies are studies too, have your baby, get an EKG as well, and know your baby's BNP test number. Even if she is healthy. My son, he's 5, he's smart, he's handsome, he's lovable, he's good, he's good. But I watch him like a hawk, when it comes to his health, even though he's healthy, because awareness saves lives. So I want to know his numbers. And so I think that moving forward, as we are defending all women on behalf of this disease, as well as now defending young women that are, planning on starting a family, as well as our children, our words are informative, and this information that all other survivors have, and putting this, together globally, all over the world. But more so in the United States of America, because we are challenged the most. I feel defeated because of the obvious. That these conversations will save lives. Your life has a purpose. I don't know why this happened to us, and why this had to happen to you. But moving forward, maybe this is our sole purpose. And why, maybe this had to happen Do you know what I'm saying? Like, there needs to be change. Women's growth during health and wellness needs to not be no longer neglected, as it has been since the beginning of time, as it has been for over 30 years, that women on this group site for peripartum cardiomyopathy group site, the women, there has been no change in some of these women that are like, oh, I've been a survivor for over 30 years. Well, we still have women saying the exact same thing that you said 30 years ago and experiencing the exact same things that you are today. And it's 2022, and it's medically proven that this should be an ancient conversation, and there is real medical proof. So it's come to this, and here we are, and I'm just so sorry that, it happened to us, but I'm grateful that, we're able to talk to each other, and we're still here, like you said, above ground, and hopefully, create a huge tsunami wave for this pregnancy movement to just go in the direction it needs to go already. Yeah. And get with the modern times of modern women today with awareness, healthcare.
Yeah.
So it's
preventable, and it'd be sure nice if insurance covered all of it. Like you got to have the medical family history to get certain tests covered. And I mean, I was always a geriatric mom, or whatever the term is, over the age of 35 when both my kids were born. And so I qualified for all kind of the standard tests.
So let me ask you, this is a big,
wasn't part of it.
Yep. So let me ask you, this is a big part of why the docuseries is labeled The Painful Truth in the U.S. with the epidemic of maternal mortality, preventable deaths in the U.S. Why? Canada does not pay for anything for healthcare. They're completely covered. Hospitals, vests, they don't have monthly insurance. American women, even diagnosed over 8 years ago, are still getting out of debt from that diagnosis bill. And that's where we're also defeated as American women. Not only do we not have the diagnosis in gynecology, but we also do not have we don't have diagnosis. We pay a lot of money for insurance. Half the things are not covered. I have a girl that has a vest. They're charging $5,000 for 3 months. You can't own the vest. You have to rent it. You paid $5,000 for it. You can't even own it. What is your cost for the vest out of pocket that they gave you? Did they hand it to you and say, here, you can have it? Did you get to keep it?
No, I had to return it when I was done with it. My insurance covered it, so I had already hit
but
my
what is it?
max,
Okay,
so
what kind of insurance do you have?
I'm with Regions. I'm a state employee. I work for a community college, so my insurance is pretty good. But, that's not the case for everybody. And honestly, my worst fear in all this is there's a 50% chance that each of my daughters inherited this genetic mutation, which will be a cardiac vulnerability for them for their lives if they're positive. And whether I get them genetic tests or not to have a definitive answer for each of them, even just the fact that my medical history could prevent them from being eligible for life insurance or long-term care, or God forbid, if the ACA ever gets repealed, they might not be able to get insured at all outside of an employer. And how kind of sense does that make? Like
it makes absolutely
it's not just immoral,
no
it's more expensive to society.
It's a crime to humanity.
Yeah.
In America.
Yeah, it's scary. it feels like we're in this very, very thin, adequate safety net that, thank God, it's there, but it's doesn't feel strong enough or durable enough or
We
thick
are
enough.
completely vulnerable. We are completely vulnerable to anything above and beyond the care and the safety that we feel. We don't feel safe. We don't feel safe. We were severely neglected as pregnant women because we were never diagnosed. And it's scary to be in a vulnerable situation where the medical community doesn't even have awareness, really. And it's scary that you find out when your life is already at a threat. We are so vulnerable as women in America to just be left to suffer and to die. And then we can't even do anything about it. When, families can't really sue, even after if they died, because we are pregnancy malpractice and the doctors are protected. The women are not. The families are not. And we don't have a chance if we have this disease and not diagnosed. I don't know how I lived. I don't know how I woke up from cardiac death. I don't know how I woke up from being frozen like a popsicle for like over 2 weeks. I don't know how I woke up and I'm not brain dead, honestly. 3 months after giving birth to my son. I just know that this cannot happen anymore. It can't happen to women anymore globally, but most definitely because we pay so much money for insurance and we depend on our medical physicians to have awareness of the preventions, because it's medically proven and there are preventions. They're just not applied in practice or trained or educated. And once educated and still not applied, which I follow up on many offices, over 2,000 in the United States of America, that have the awareness and they brush it under the rug just like they did. Maybe because it's not joyful. Maybe I don't know what the reason is, but it is extremely careless and extremely unacceptable. And enough women have suffered or died to this preventable disease. When I talk, I'm always clearing my throat. I'm always feeling shortness of breath still. And I could have been saved, but I was told to basically keep my mouth shut, not say anything about this disease, from Cedars Sinai, and didn't give me my right medical records. I am a Jersey girl. You can take the girl out of Jersey, but you can't take the Jersey out of the girl. I'm a Philly girl, and I stand up for women and women's rights. I have my master's in social work at the University of Pennsylvania. I have, 4 degrees. I have 2 dual degrees with my, main, degree in social work and human services. And it's ironic that I have a nonprofit, since I have been educated about how to run a nonprofit now. I was in school for, over 8 years. And I didn't realize I was going to apply it because I ended up coming to Hollywood and working on TV shows for the last 18 years, working on every top TV show, to now applying the industry with my background education, with specifically this pregnancy-induced preventable complication that has been severely been a medical glitch since the beginning of time. We don't have childbirth fever. That's what they called it back in the 1800s. We have peripartum cardiomyopathy, PPCM, and that's what we call it in 2022. It is no longer an ancient conversation. This conversation is updated. And, hopefully, people will get with the times and not look at education and informative life-saving information as fearful, but as awareness to prevent, because everyone has fluid and blood in their body, and anyone can get a fluid blood disease. And that's what this is. It's not the heart is affected. And if you were to do research on the BNP test, the simple blood test, it will determine cancer. It will determine dementia. You fill in the blanks. Does the BNP test determine? Yes, it shows elevated levels. And then they can do other tests to figure out, okay, where's your cancer? Okay, you're having heart failure or pregnancy-induced complications. Okay, you might have the genetic gene of dementia. But, it's like people don't even have ever heard of this test. But
no, I haven't heard of it.
The Cancer
honestly,
Association has been around forever.
And this is where I come back to insurance and it being standard and covered. Because if it had been offered to me, it's like, well, we can screen you for this super rare thing. It's not covered by insurance. It'll cost you X number of dollars to have this test. I probably would have passed on it because there's not enough cardiac history in my family to raise my, actually, I probably should be watching out for that.
Right.
It would, it shouldn't be opt-in. It should be standard.
And that's our American dream for women. Because at this point, we can't rely on assumptions because that's not working. And the definition of crazy is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results when nothing has literally changed from women speaking up with our PPCM group site. And there is zero change. And they're like, oh, I am a survivor. I'm a 27-year-old years out of being diagnosed with PPCM. I am 34 years. I am 50 years out being diagnosed, and I've lived. There are women that have been coming through that were, okay, well, how come there hasn't been change at all in over 40 to 50 years, like this woman? And or even 30 years or even 20 years, heck, even 5 years, 10 years. There have been so many articles, women dies after childbirth. They don't say it's from peripartum cardiomyopathy. They don't really know what it is because we don't have the diagnosis. And there can never be a statistics that's actually accurate because in the United States of America, at least, maybe we can assume globally, but we don't have a diagnosis. So you can't give us statistics until it's mandatory and standard, period. I mean, it's like you can't say, oh, we have 2,000 new cases a year. No, absolutely not. There is way more. And you can't give a number or statistic if there's no diagnosis. I mean, like, until there's a diagnosis, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear assumptions. I want to know facts. And you can't give facts without having a standard mandatory screening, labs, and testings for all pregnancy, healthy or not, 18 or not. I don't care if she's even, she shouldn't be pregnant at 16 years old anyway, but if she does and she's healthy, you still give the standard mandatory screenings because this is a young woman healthy disease. I have girls that are as young as 16 and 18 years old that are PPCM. Age has nothing to do with this disease, and neither is health. It does not discriminate any woman, this disease. This is a fluid disease, a blood disease, and it can crush you, and it can, really change your outlook on, on the healthcare for pregnancy and gynecology and OB. And the fact when women go back and they tell their OB, like I did at Cedars-Sinai, they did everything wrong. They said everything wrong. They didn't ask the right questions. They didn't care. They showed that. They verbalized it, basically. They weren't looking at me. My doctor was not looking at me when I was telling her I had cardiac death and I am peripartum. She's looking at the computer telling me what a great school, college she went to for medicine. She's telling me I was perfectly healthy during my pregnancy. And I'm like, well, first of all, look at me and stop looking at your computer because I'm sitting right here. Second of all, I wasn't healthy. I had cardiac death from a pregnancy-induced complication that you had absolutely no awareness of. You were having me go to a nutritionist when I was full of fluid. There's a different type of weight. I wasn't, gaining fat weight. I was gaining fluid weight. And she was wrong in every aspect of what she said. And then the other one that delivered my baby, she said that I just got the bad luck of the draw. And that it's not common. How can she say that it's not common if she doesn't even have the diagnosis available? And how could she say that I have the bad luck of the draw when really the only bad luck of the draw at Cedars-Sinai is that out of over 15 doctors, including East and West Tower, as well as the ER clinic, not one doctor, not one. And I have the best insurance that money cannot buy. I have motion picture pension and health plan. I'm a Teamster. I've been in the industry for over 18 years. I had the best of the best. But nobody's the best with lack of awareness. And that's where my bad luck of the draw was, that I didn't have one doctor, not one. They kept checking the baby's brain, checking the baby's heart. They said everything was normal. I was not normal. I was full of fluid and I was drowning and I was suffocating until death. That is not a normal pregnancy. But I was giving them the benefit of the doubt and I was trying to educate them. And I said, I am not suing you. I want to educate you. I want you to learn from my experience. And they basically told me, fuck off. I don't want to see you. I don't want to ever hear from you. And, not a real apology. It was like, you talk about this and, basically, you can, threatening me to talk about, not to keep my mouth shut about this. And my husband, I remember he walked out, he was crying. I was angry. He had a different emotion towards it because it's so frustrating to make a young family that just gave birth, make them feel like this preventable disease is just not important when in reality it's so common. It's just rare for any doctor to have any awareness and for that doctor to say, oh, you are just a rare pregnancy. No, you don't have the diagnosis mandatory, so you cannot say that. I didn't have the articulation and the knowledge to go back to my gynecologist and to defend myself at that time. I was so vulnerable. I didn't know what the hell happened. I'm a very healthy girl. And for 12 months later, for me to have my times of death called, and then you're even unwilling to listen, and you're supposedly the best hospital in Beverly Hills, shame on all of you for not coming to me, calling me, knocking on my door, which I'm in walking distance. I was in walking distance at the time to that hospital. They could have even had somebody come over. You know what they did instead? They had somebody come over to screen me if I was going to be a well-fit mother, because I had, I didn't know I was having heart failure. And so they were making me feel like there was something wrong with me, and I've wanted this baby my entire life. I was a teacher, many moons ago. I love children. I love babies. I dedicated my life to basically the most joyous moments of my life were stripped away from the women in gynecology that should have been my biggest supporter, my biggest, I am sorry that this happened to you. I mean, that's all I really wanted, was a little respect for maternal mortality, coming back from death with a defibrillator inside of me and a baby, literally, I can't even breastfeed. It's terrible what women have to go through. And the fact that, your 19-month-old baby could have possibly have lost you. And I believe you're going to live a long life. I know you will, because we're talking about it and you have a positive coping approach that I believe this is your purpose, to talk about this and why you lived, because we are the voices for women who don't no longer have a voice. Yeah. Truly.
I mean, every doctor, every new cardiologist I meet is like, wow, you look great for what you've been through. You're so positive. You're so,
me.
I'm like, it's my only option. There's only one door left for me in that, I have no option but to be positive. My kids need me. I move forward. I do what I have to do to stay here.
We're a freaking wreck. Okay. I mean, we are, but we learn how to cope through and how to stay strong. And like I said, you have to be a very, 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 very strong person to overcome the fears that this is just part of the recovery. And your heart can be fully recovered, but mentally we're never recovered. This is traumatic. So no, we're never really recovered. Our hearts, maybe our lives will be shortened, but our minds is the most important advocacy awareness. When surviving this, there needs to be more advocacy with mental health when we go through something like this. This trauma is beyond words, to the point where nobody would understand unless they experience it themselves, period. You can't have people feel what you feel. You can only tell them, but they can't feel pain. They can't feel your pain. The great thing about pain is that it has no memory. I mean, we can go back and try to remember, oh yeah, I remember I was dying and it was suffocating and it hurt, but we don't physically remember that pain.
Yeah.
So when we're talking to others about it, they might be desensitized in a sense, where in one ear and out the other. Okay, got it, check. No, it doesn't affect them, until it hits home. And that's what we're trying to avoid anyway. The ignorance of this disease is very difficult to connect the wires, connect everything, for it to have some sort of system within this disease, because it's severely lacking.
Well, thank you for doing this.
Yeah, well, it's my pleasure. And, again, I love a follow-up, just like set up another appointment, like later when you know your EF percent, what maybe your um, medical care plan will be. Maybe try finding you a heart that's compatible. I can maybe give you also an email address and a number at Birmingham, Alabama, that maybe you can inquire and see if you can get your medical records over to their heart harvest, and maybe they can go in their archives and find one, and do that, instead of, self-advocate, with that. Don't take their word for it as that's it. Oh, dooms, can't find it, 7%. I mean, it's like, no. Mm-mm. There are always an alternative. And I feel it's out there. It's just going to take some research. And that's what I think what we try to do for our children, what we would do for a friend, or we just need to do for ourselves regarding this. And if this way doesn't work, then we try another way. It's constantly self-advocating, I know, they don't, right? So we have to find somebody that knows, that we can relate with, because if we're educating them, that's scary. You want that doctor to know more than you, right?
Yeah.
Well, I my heart goes out to you. I will definitely keep you in my prayers, my thoughts, and, many blessings for good health. And hopefully, you won't need a new heart. Hopefully, you wake up and all of a sudden, I don't know, you heal miraculously overnight. The body and the function of our bodies, when we're sick, it knows it wants to heal. Our bodies recover. And, the heart is so strong. It's amazing. I mean, I had cardiac death and now I show zero sign, but I had it. So it's amazing how, like, your body will heal itself, and it does just take a little time. And when you think, oh shit, then you get great news and you're like, okay, well, why did I just, like you said, put myself in this dark place when I didn't need to? That's why awareness is so important. And just keep on top of the numbers and the awareness, and know that, if you feel something, maybe it is anxiety. We do have subliminal anxiety from PTS, major anxiety, when we're sleeping even. So there's a difference between anxiety and heart failure. When we're pregnant and when you're feeling it, doctors say it's anxiety. No, it's heart failure. But then afterwards, it really might be anxiety and not heart failure. So there's a confusion between mental health and the physical heart. What is anxiety and what is really heart failure? So once you determine those two, I think that also relieves a lot of stress, because I'm like, okay, it's not my heart, it's just my anxiety, and it's subconscious. So it's dormant and it comes out sometimes, but you feel like you're having heart failure, but you're like, okay, I know I'm not. You check your watch, your Apple Watch, your Fitbit watch, you check your blood pressure, and you're like, okay, it's just me. It's not my heart. And then that's when you're like, woosah. Put on some classical
Whereas
music.
before I didn't know, is it anxiety or is it this thing I've never heard of? How would I know? Nobody tell me about it until I'm half dead.
Exactly. And that's the conundrum that we go through in trying to figure out our bodies, because we want to listen to our bodies and advocate, but we're like, okay, is it, we don't know. But that's what you'll learn. You'll know the feeling, you'll learn it. And it does. It's like you start to relearn your body on what your norm is. And when it's heart failure. You know what I'm saying? If you have to, question it, it's really good that we do have this technology to confirm that it is in fact anxiety and not heart failure. We have this available. So utilize that tool, and get the best one that's out there. You know what I'm saying? And that way you can reassure yourself, okay, I went through trauma. I just need to be kinder to myself. Maybe, whatever it is that will make you calm, whether it's the sound of the rainstorm, or, just the piano, or something that can just say, okay, I'm okay. And that I'll be okay, because the mind can, I believe, heal the heart more than the heart can heal the mind. You know what I'm saying? And I like I said, I'm as a nonprofit, and a platform. I mean, you can message me. I'm going to message you some numbers, and if you'd like to follow through with them, you can. If it's not a fit, then don't, but it can't hurt, just to inquire and have backup for backup.
Yeah. Yeah, for
so
sure. Thank you for that.
You feel like you've taken every, okay, I have this great doctor, but I want backup, like you have all, all your, the system's not functional, but you can create function within the system for yourself. Right. You can create it. It's not there, but there are ways for this to be managed. And I'll definitely give you some numbers, and and maybe it will help, or maybe it might lead you to another person. It's
sure.
Referral upon referral. I believe that this world has been working in mysterious ways and connecting, and you never know where this might lead to in like a year. You could be fully recovered and doing so great, you might not even need the heart. If you keep telling yourself every day, I believe that is possible. I believe we can heal our bodies, and I believe in mental health, and I believe in not being ashamed of it either, and I believe that you will have recovery, and you are meant to be here. So I look forward to connecting with you again and doing a follow-up.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Enjoy your baby.
Take care.
Boo-boo. You too. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us and listening to the PPCM Fund podcast. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. PPCM's Painful Truth is made possible through the generous support of donors like you. Help us spread the awareness by donating at ppcmfund.com, or click the link below to become a member through Ko-fi. Have a great day.